Thank you. Good afternoon. I call to order the Town of Hilton Head Island Finance and Administrative Committee of September 21, 2021. Zendaya, have we complied with the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, sir, we have.
Thank you. You have before you the agenda. Are there any recommended changes from staff? Hearing none. Any recommended changes from the committee?
Move for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same. I'd like to acknowledge Councilwoman Tammy Becker and Councilman David Ames sitting in and participating in this committee. We have minutes of August 17, 2021. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions?
Move for approval.
Thank you. Is there a
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed by the same. Zendaya, good job. Those were not easy to write. Zendaya, do we have an appearance or comments by any citizens?
Yes, sir. We do have Mr. Hoagland. However, he has dropped from the call. If you'd like to continue with new business and possibly come back, we can do that, but that's your decision.
We will do that.
Okay.
Under new business, we have two agenda items. The first is the consideration of the proposed calendar year 2022 meeting dates. You'll notice that the meetings are scheduled once a month, and we are at 2 o'clock. And Zendaya, we are backed up to proposed 3 o'clock start times for town council, are we not?
That I am not sure of, but I have heard that. I can't confirm that though.
So depending upon the length of the agenda, we may have to convene at 1 o'clock instead of 2. But right now, the proposed schedule is in front of you, and with the meeting starting time at 2 o'clock.
Move for approval of the calendar dates.
Thank you, Bill. Is there a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed by the same. Thank you.
Mr. Lennox,
Yes.
you have Mr. Hoagland back on the line if you'd like to entertain appearance by citizens.
Okay, we will take all citizens at this time. Mr. Hoagland.
Mr. Hoagland, are you able to unmute yourself?
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, afternoon. Skip Hoagland, Windmill Harbor. Town is in violation of South Carolina FOIA laws. Mr. Lennox, this council's ongoing corruption assisting Bill Miles' chamber to illegally be issued and secretly misuse tens of millions of hard-earned tax money as hired ATAX funded DMO is coming to an end. I now demand FOIA ATAX accounting compliance from you, Mr. Lennox, David Ames, and the town lawyers on the millions you just handed to Bill Miles, including all receipts and matching invoices on where these disappeared, including Canada. I want detailed proof these funds were used legally and provided returns to this community in the age of technology. South Carolina Turk just sent a letter to you in this highly dishonest town municipality. I quote parts of it. Tourism Expenditure Review Committee Turk, the annual accommodation tax reporting form is due by October 1 per the requirements of section 6-4-10 of the South Carolina Code of Laws. New this year, at the bottom of the reporting form on side A, we ask that you name the 30% recipient nonprofit organization, the Hilton Head Bluffton Chamber, but ask for no other information about the organization. A recent Supreme Court ruling filed by me, expert FOIA lawyers Smith and Bender, has changed that now. The recent court ruling has been interpreted by our legal counsel to mean the 30% nonprofit organization needs to be approved and the accounting of these funds must be presented to Turk. We understand this is a bit of a procedural change for all of us. I also expect FOIA for all accounting on millions of South Carolina PRT matching grants, hurricane marketing funds, some 750,000 plus, Governor Master 1.4 million illegal private COVID relief funding to Bill Miles, tax money used to join the town council as a private chamber member. So, Mr. Lennox, I expect my FOIA for all aid tax accounting from Bill Miles by October 1, and will FOIA South Carolina Turk to assure that you sent them the same detailed accounting and nothing is missing. Any further attempt by you, Mr. Lennox, and town council, town officials, town lawyers, CPAs, auditors, to continue committing fraud on the behalf of Bill Miles and this secret sauce tax scam illegally operated as an IRS 501-C6 nonprofit chamber CVB commingled will only result in forensic audits and I assume arrests, convictions, and prison like happened in Palm Beach, Florida. Am I clear, Banker Lennox? Mr. Lennox, am I clear? Do you understand what you just heard? Do you understand what you just received? You can nod your head and or you can just sit there with a blank stare in your face, but your corruption is over. Your days are over, Mr. Lennox. Do you understand that? No more. The corruption is over. Thank you very much.
Zendaya, do we have any other comments waiting?
No, sir, that is all.
Thank you. New business item 6B. We are into the first quarter of our fiscal 2022, and John Troyer will report the first 2 months' revenue and expenses. John.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I will share my screen now. Okay. These numbers are from July 1st to August 31st, as Mr. Chairman had talked about the first 2 months of the new fiscal year. A year ago, I just went back and took a look at my report, and I thought it was kind of interesting to see some of the notes that I had from last year. A year ago, we were saying at this time, we need to keep control over expenses. We need to continue monitoring revenues. So far, so good. So far as not so far, and adjust where necessary. And that's what we were saying. We were also acknowledging that town council's previous actions to build reserves and diversify revenue streams were certainly helping out at that time a year ago. For the June 30th report, part of what I reported back is revenues came back. We had a dip from the initial COVID experience, pandemic, and revenues came back, and they came back strong. We did hold some spending and defer some spending. And the town has also benefited from, again, reserve policies, and so far so good. The measures are working. We finished last fiscal year, be able to put it in the books, make it official. Our financial measures are working to manage through the pandemic. And so June 30th is a good milestone. So far so good. We're happy to report that part was successful. General fund monthly revenues last month. You can see that July was the best of the last 4 years. Good start for the year. How did August do? Above expectations. And so you can see it's significantly more. We'll go into a little bit of the reasoning behind that, but essentially we received some money from the state that would have normally come in September, we got that at the end of August, and it makes our numbers look exceptionally good, and that'll balance out in September. Also, another point to make, if you look at this from the full year perspective, we've got July and August here at the books, but 2 months down, 10 to go. There's still a long way to go and a lot of revenue yet to collect. And so we can be encouraged by a good start, but there's much to go. If we look at this from a year-to-date perspective, July and August is off to a strong start. So we're happy about that. Again, we had $1 million payment from the state that came early, and so that shows up in our numbers. And again, if you look at our year-to-date compared to the last 3 years to date, it's still early in the process, still early in the year. We can be happy about it, but there's a long way to go. Property taxes, if you look at the spread between the different months for the last couple of years, here we are in August and we're barely showing on the graph. And so it just underscores that it's just early in the process and we have a long way to go. Property taxes, at the end of the year for June, we convert from basically a cash basis to accrual basis. And so just from a practical standpoint, property taxes that we get in July, collected by the county in June, remitted to us in July, we go ahead and book those back to June 30th at the end of the year. And when we start the new fiscal year, we convert back to a cash basis. And so it gives the appearance that there's no collections in July. It's just that the July collections are moved to June 30, and August is the first month of the year that we get collections. And so this is all normal. Basically, June has 2 months worth of collections in our reporting, although we get collections every single month, and then we're back to 1 per month in August. Nice start to the year, but it's early. Again, property taxes, you look at year to date, this is where we are, and this is where we've got to go. So if you look at this in the chart, I hate to put up too many spreadsheets, but basically we're less than 1% collected for this far in the year, so still way early. Another chart, there's a lot of numbers here, but I would like to point to the bottom line here, the total. And these are just representative revenues that I thought would be helpful for the Finance and Administrative Committee to kind of get a finger on the pulse, so to speak, of how are our revenues doing, how are we doing. And we try to be consistent and present these same revenues every single month, and you can kind of get a feel as we go. But collectively, this group is 51% better than last year. A big item on this is business license, and this is the state business license. This is the one that we got $1 million payment earlier this year in August, that we got $1 million last year in September. And so that increase is going to moderate when we report our September numbers. Still positive though. And I make a note here also, this early in the year, small changes can seem large, and I can zip through some of these. The TIF money, it's so early, 62% decline. We're not worried about it. We'll talk later in future months. Local aid tax, we're encouraged by this start to the year, and we're appreciative of how well it's doing. Real estate transfer fee. Last year was a really good year, and we're starting out even better than last year. So I think that's something to be said for. H-tax. H-tax at the start of the pandemic was the one that was hurt the most. And so I think a piece of this increase here is that we're seeing it was still a little bit last year reduced for the early parts of the COVID, and we're doing well on A-tax. Beach and accommodation, good start. Electric franchise fee, that boils down to electricity usage. It can be a lot weather directed, but it also is another measure of the economy also. Road usage fee, we get a little bit each month, but a decrease at this time of the year is not anything to be concerned about. Stormwater, same story as the TIF. It's way too early to draw conclusions, and there'll be a real concerted, concentrated collections here in the December, January, and February for those. Property taxes we talked about were 5% behind last year, that were less than 1% collected. So that is okay. EMS, these are our ambulance revenues, 36% up. I think last year's numbers were still down for the COVID. That we're still early in the pandemic. And this is more of a normal to even better than normal month. And so that's why you see that increase. Permits, 7.4% less than last year, but last year was a really, really good year for permits. And so I'm not concerned about that. And I think we're off to a good start with permits.
John, before you leave that slide, the road usage fee budget is approximately $1 million a year.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is 1 month's collection. And so it has a similar look as far as your collections per month. And so, yeah, you can multiply by 12 and you get really close to $1 million. How do we do to the to last year's full year for these? And so if we compare to how we are so far, $6 million collections, compared to, for this group of revenues, $86 million in actual last year, we're 7.2% into the year. And so that's 2 months in. It's a good start, but it's still early. And you can look at, for instance, the state accommodations tax. We haven't had any collections yet, but we'll get a quarterly payment coming soon. So it's just another indicator that, got a nice start, but a long way to go. Expenses, we have some seasonality. Here's the last couple of years, or last 3 years for seasonal expenses. July, if you looked at last month, we started out, here's the last 4 years. And this year we had higher insurance premiums. We had the Low Country Celebration Park, and we also had Fire Station 2 added to our insurance. We also had an increase in our cybersecurity. The premiums are going up on that as well. So that kind of kicks off the year with higher expenses than we had, but not anything that we didn't expect. August balances out a little bit, and some of this is just the timing of payroll. It's just a little bit different each year, and so you're ending up seeing a little bit of difference in those things. Year to date, I think, is a better way to look at this, and it's going to level out as we go through the year. And so year to date, our spending is 5.4% more than last year. I've got 2020, but I meant 2021 would be August 2020, but it'll be fiscal 2021. But you can kind of see it's right in line with what we would expect this far into the year. Again, this is only 2 months in, and so we've got 10 months to go. A lot more to come. Spending by category. You can look at the different breakdowns. Town council manager, small differences can make a big percentage, and so I would not be at all concerned about that. That will level out within the next month or two. PPF, we did a couple of things that are in there that are not there last year. As our beach initiatives are showing up in PPF, and there's also been an enhanced effort at landscaping. And so you're seeing some of those additional expenses this year that were not there last year. And it gives this early on, it shows an increase, but that increase won't be that big as we go later into the year.
John? what is your monthly accrual for the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office?
Yeah, we're accruing the same 1/12 of $2 million every month.
All right.
Year to date, August, year to date, you can see general fund spending 6 million of almost 44 million. And so our remaining budget is 37, almost $38 million. And so 2 months in, we're 13.9% into the budget. Last year, we were 13.6. And so this is about where we would expect to be. So yeah, I would also point out is that, although there was an increase for town council manager area, specifically as a part of percentage of the budget, it's the lowest in the group. And so you're starting with a really low number. That's all going to be fine. Here's just another reminder of our seasonality of our reserves. And so we appreciate town council's policies to have those reserves. It gives us the opportunity to keep the town running while we, in spite of the seasonality of our revenue, and it keeps the town expenses moving every single month, and we don't have to wait for revenue in order to serve the public. Last month, we started out looking very much like the previous 3 years. That was just July. Because we had such a good month in August, you can see our August number was a positive, and small positive basically because of that state funding that came earlier than it did last year. So you'll see that level out in September. Still up to a strong start. We like the numbers. We like where we're starting out. And so year to date, we have not had to use as much reserves as we had in the last 3 years. And that's all a good sign. If you just look at it in a linear graph, and this is basically the same thing, but you can see 2022 is doing better than the last 3 years on our temporary use of reserves. And so a good start to the year. You'll see 2022 looking an awful lot like 2021 next month, but we'll see more next month. Here's in the bigger picture. If you look at just these 2 months are just a good start, and yet we've got a long way to go. If you look at each individual month, the green is the revenue, the red is the spending. Here's the first 2 months of the year. And if you look at the year to date, it ends up being more of a trend. And it will look more like a trend as the year goes on. Just as this is a reminder of last year, green again being last year's revenue, the red is last year's spending. It took until February, March, before this turned. And so spending was ahead of revenue until right in March. And then we finished out the year with ahead of spending. So we're happy to report that. Again, our chairman had asked, and I'll just talk a little bit about this. This is revenues and transfers in, and I think what I'd like to do is provide a little more detail to kind of split that out. Here's revenues and here's transfers in. And I think that will be helpful for the schedule. But yeah, got a really good start on revenue. Our spending is slightly up. And then, of course, if you've got an earlier $1 million payment, then that makes this increase look really bigger than it would have normally. But it's a good start to the year, so we're happy about it. Beach fees. Here's our seasonality of the beach fees, and you can see the green in August. We're off to a good start, and so we're happy about that. Again, similar story. It's only 2 months, and there's still yet a big hill to climb, but we're off to a good start. and I showed this last month, but I think it's worth repeating, just because the HTAX was the hardest hit category with the pandemic. Um, Hospitality is on the prepared food and beverage collections and prepared food and beverage sales. And 2019 it was 7.5 million, 2020, $6.3 million. And so that really hit in April, May, and June last year as the pandemic started. And then for fiscal 21, we not only came back to the 7.5, but we more than made up the losses in 2021. So we're happy to report that. How are we doing this year? Even from a good year last year, we've got a good start in August. Hospitality taxes more than that, so we're happy. But just like the beach, we've got a big hill to climb yet. 2 months done, 10 months to go. This is old news about debt, but just a reminder, we've got $16 million in planned principal payments, so planned $16 million to reduce debt. We do have a planned $6.2 million lease for fire trucks, and so a net decrease in debt for this fiscal year, $10 million. And so I think that's worth repeating. So of our $96 million debt, our $96 million budget, you'll see a net reduction in debt of $10 million this fiscal year. This is last year, looking backwards. What did town council do? Town council monitored revenue. Town council closely monitored the pandemic. Town council monitored the local economy, monitored expenditures. We delayed capital spending, some capital spending into 2022. We delayed implementation of merit and delayed compensation plan adjustments until the revenue picture was more clear. And so we did refinance twice for lower interest rates, and we reduced debt overall. So as an outcome, and we've talked about this, but I'm so happy, I want to say it again. The town is financially better positioned for the future. The town has affirmed its bond ratings with all three agencies, and most notably the AAA with Moody's. And so we recently have had some discussions with both Fitch and Moody's, kind of getting an update because they still are very, very in tune with how are we responding to the COVID pandemic, how are our revenues doing, what's our cash on hand. They're still watching these details. And I was glad to report in the last 3 weeks, our rating agencies are still monitoring us and still looking for details and still surprised in a good way at how well we're doing. And so it's always good to get that positive feedback from the rating agencies, and it makes my job a lot easier when I can report good news. So key issues for the new year look a whole lot like the old, just what we were talking about, same issues. I did change number 5 to proceed with our capital spending in FY 2022. We have a really good capital plan. It's going to improve the island. We have funding for it, and so there is no reason to wait or delay. And so, many times the financial people can be the people that slow things down, but I think that's one of the things that we can report is that there's no reason to delay these capital improvements to make our island better. And we've got our merit adjustments. They're scheduled in January. No reason to wait, at least for now, for what's planned. And so we'll continue to look for interest rate savings, and we'll continue to pay down our debt as we go. With that, Mr. Chairman, I am open for any comments or questions.
Thank you, John. I open it up to the committee and to David and Tammy with any questions or comments. Glenn. Unmute yourself, Glenn.
John?
John, we've had positive results most of the year through the previous fiscal year. And we're getting started very well now. I'm interested, do we have any data on what other coastal communities' financial experience has been in comparison with that of Hilton Head Island?
Anecdotally,
Yes.
other communities are doing well, but not as well as we are. So I feel like we're an outlier in a good way.
But we have the best finance director of the group. So that's the reason for that.
I just tell the story.
Secondly, we're getting ready for some big changes in business license fees. Some of the businesses here are going to get hit with a reclassification and an increase in taxes. And I think they're aware of that. What are you hearing from the business community about the changes in the business license tax?
Sure. No, I'm glad. Thank you for bringing that up. The state passed an act last year that would make the business license approach and regulations much more standard statewide. And there was a requirement for standardization. There's also part of that standardization is standard reclassifications for businesses, so that they have a business activity in more than one jurisdiction, they would know that they would be classified the same in all jurisdictions, okay? And so what we found is that across the state, there were many, many differences. And so part of what we're doing beyond the model ordinance is to reclassify all the businesses in accordance with the state classifications. And what that will do is, for some businesses, that will be a higher rate, some businesses that'll be a lower rate. But what we did is we adjusted our rates to be revenue neutral based on those reclassifications. And so we've had some really good meetings with the public. We've had some good meetings with the chamber. We certainly appreciate our chamber partnership. And we've had good feedback. People understand that these changes were part of an initiative to try to simplify tax reporting for businesses statewide. And so we're just trying to be a part of that.
Yes, thank you. Finally, I think it was your slide number 37, where you were talking about business licenses.
Let's see if I can find that. Yeah, let's go back.
It's a bar chart.
Bar chart.
37.
37.
Okay. No, this is hospitality, but okay, go ahead and we'll talk about it. Yes, business license, we have two big categories. We have what's collected locally, and then we have what's collected statewide. And so the state law divides those up.
Okay, and that's done on a fiscal year basis, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, I think that answers my question. Thank you, Tom.
Bill.
Yes, John, once again, an excellent report. The conservative side in me reminds me that we're 16%, into the new year, so we still have a long way to go. But I'm cautiously optimistic, and I continue to really respect the way you run your shop. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any others?
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Tom?
Yes.
Thank you. John, does my memory serve me correctly that the real estate transfer has some sort of a sunset date on it?
Yes, that is correct. Your memory is correct. And
When is that?
From my memory, and I'm a little skeptical about that, but I think it's the end of 2024. And so we
That's
are approaching.
Fiscal 24 or calendar 24?
I think it's the end of calendar 24. And so
Okay.
that's my memory. And so we're doing very, very well. Real estate transactions and real estate prices are both up, and we're seeing really strong collections in both areas. But that's also something to be cognizant of, is that the authority to collect this fee will expire if it's not renewed or extended.
Right, and I don't have the expected revenues for fiscal 22. Do you happen to know those off the top of your head?
We're not off the top of my head, but yeah, 2021 was really strong, stronger than we thought, and we're starting off 22 even better. And so-
Okay, and without getting into too much detail, how have we been using those funds within our budgets?
well,
Or maybe a different way to ask the question: what are the approved uses of those funds?
from my memory, what we have used it for is for land purchases. Okay, but then the approved uses would also be land purchases, and I think there's also a provision in there for land improvements. And so we haven't gone beyond land purchase, but that would be town council's prerogative.
Okay, I appreciate that. One question related to what I think Glenn was asking about how have we done relative to other communities? And you said, well, other communities have done well, but we've done better. Would you attribute that to our multiple sources of revenues? Or do other communities have basically the same set of sources?
No, I would certainly attribute that to our multiple sources of revenue. That certainly helps. Other communities are much more focused, and so if you have fewer revenue sources, if one of them has a bad year, you really feel it. And in our case, because we have a nice list, portfolio, if you may, of different revenue sources, that helps to smooth this out and certainly help us to work through difficult economic times.
Thank you. Tom, I just put an asterisk on our meeting this morning, or today, and say who's to follow up on the real estate transfer sunset issue.
That's a very, very good point. We've had discussion about it before, and I think you are right, John, that it sunsets at the end of 24. That's a serious concern for us because it is one of our primary sources of revenue.
Can you talk?
Yes.
Sure. And I know there's Mark, and so our town manager, Mr. Orlando, has had a number of conversations about the importance of the future of the real estate transfer fee, if we can.
Right.
There'll come a time when we have to do what's necessary to lobby our state delegation if they would be part and parcel to any extension or renewal.
Mr. Chairman, Councilman Lennox, I will prepare a little bit of a background on it and remind us all of just maybe prepare a one-page memo to let you know formally the exact date it expires, what the current fiscal year 22 or 21 revenues are, projections this year, our allowed uses of funds and current. And then I'll also identify with John and Josh. Josh is here with me in my office. We were just talking about it on the side, to really explain to town council what the process is to, I would say, reset, extend the real estate transfer fee. So I'll turn that around to you fairly quickly. I know that there are most likely stakeholders to talk through, and the sooner I get you a background on it and understanding, the better.
Thank you, Mark. And I think pertaining to the question regarding a comparison of our revenue to other communities, we've said this before, it's amazing how resilient the Hilton Head economy is. You know, John breaks out two types of revenue for us on a monthly basis. The first is real estate related, and in that is the transfer fee that we're talking about, plus the permit fee that we collect. And the second classification is tourism related, and that's where a tax, hospitality tax, and beach fees are. And we continue to see month over month, quarter over quarter, and actually year over year increases in those. And that's really attributed to the resilience and strength of our economy. I think the large employers and the business owners on the island responded very, very quickly to the threats that were posed by COVID and the corresponding pandemic and got ahead of it. And that's evident in the taxes that we collect as a result of their business activity. So I say again, I am just amazed at how resilient this local economy was over the past 18 to 20 months. John, you also talked about certain expenses being higher than the previous year to date, and you were comfortable with those. Are they tracking pretty much with the 2022 budget?
Yes, they are, Mr. Chairman. And one thing that I did not note, and I'm glad that you reminded me, is that if you look at our townwide expenses, part of our townwide expenses are going to be our insurance premiums. And so that's a reason that the townwide went up. But also our townwide included two new items this year that were not there last year, and $125,000 transfer to the capital plan and $125,000 transfer to fund balance. And so we've got two items that are in there. The transfer from the general fund to the capital plan has already occurred, and that's another reason for being ahead of last year. And so I think that all underscores just part of, we're happy to be able to include that in the budget.
Any other questions or comments? Alex?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And John, thank you for another fine report, even though we're too early to tell, so to speak. But I did have a question and then a comment for Mr. Orlando. The question, how does the continued county assessment of properties affect our property tax collection, John?
So let me see if I understand your question. Is that the county assigns through the assessor's office the assessed value, and the county issues the tax bills and collects on our behalf, and then they intermittently throughout the year will share that revenue back to us. And so what you're asking is that relationship working? Is that?
No, what I'm asking is, I guess I can appreciate as we close out our last fiscal year that we're showing an improvement. I guess what I'm really asking is year over year, how does that assessment correlate with either the increase or decrease in our property tax collections?
It does help, and I think that would be a good item for some future. I'll delve into that in more detail, but certainly the increase in real estate values, the high level of transactions has certainly helped the tax roll. And that has, and then if you think about it, as real estate transactions happen, then people get caught up on their property taxes, and that helps our collections as well.
Sure. Yeah, if you could tease that out to a degree, John, moving forward, that'd be great. Okay. I know that there's a schedule on the assessment, so I guess that item is somewhat static through a period of time, right? But it's going to affect our numbers to some degree. So it'll just be interesting to see it in that fashion. And
it's extremely important, yes.
Yeah. And as far as my comment to Mr. Orlando, as we start to unpeel this real estate transfer fee, I guess first of all, I know I've been calling for us to be a little bit more creative in how we can sustain that number. Now it's basically folks fleeing from the north to some sense of escaping COVID to a degree, with a lot of open air and being able to work from home, which has got our inventory levels really low when it comes to housing, and prices really high, which is a good thing. But I'm not sure how long we can sustain that. I will give some credit to the chamber. I just read, I'm sure you all have also, that Hilton Head was ranked, I guess, in the top 50 of best places to live on in the country. Okay, which was great. Okay, but that just continues to help push on that line item. But more importantly, as we start to have these discussions about advocating for the real estate transfer fee to stay in effect, I think it's important for us to go back in history just a bit and see what things look like when the real estate market was not as good as it is now. Okay, because I think that's going to force us into some tough decisions if we don't have that money piling up as it has this particular year. So I just wanted to offer that as part of our discussion moving forward. Other than that, things look good. And again, thank John and his team for delivering this report.
Thank you, Alex. Is there any other business to come before this committee? If there is not, one final comment to John is if you can do as well with the next 2 months' weather as you've done with the first 2 months' financials, I think we'll be okay. Get us through October.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all, thank you for your participation. We stand adjourned.